It goes back to that whole like Instagram, TikTok culture sometimes too, of just like, can we make it sexy again to realize you're going to bust your ass to build this thing? And in doing so and being super focused, it's going to provide you with a lot of options. But if we only focus on like, I don't want to work, but somehow I think I'm going to get there, that to me was just like such a major disconnect. And we see that in the money conversations. We see that in the wanting something, but not have had built anything close to that yet. And that's where a coach sometimes has to have like a very direct come to Jesus moment of, what is this really going to take to build this practice?
Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We are here to lead you on the way.
All right, welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. I am back today with Dr. Eric, one of our returning guests and one of the coaches for TRP, and we are going to have a money talk today. So welcome back, Eric. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, always great. You have so much knowledge to share, and this is going to be a rich conversation because many times we may not even recognize some of the limiting beliefs we have around money or some of the things we need to break through in our mind, recognizing that money is a form of exchange. And if we're going to be in business, we certainly need to have that part of our vision straightened out. So let's dive in, Eric.
Yeah, no, and this is a great topic because a lot of docs, chiropractic school teaches us to be chiropractors, but doesn't teach us how to start or grow a business. It's just not a part of that. So that's something that TRP brings, obviously. But starting out, I know, and you probably remember too, Lona, starting out, I didn't even know what I didn't know when it came to things like this, right? I was just like, well, if I just have more money coming in than going out, I'm succeeding. But I didn't know how to strategically do it. Because what I find is that most new chiropractors, they don't struggle in business because they can't adjust. They struggle because they allocate money emotionally instead of strategically, right? Mm-hmm. And the biggest mistake I see is that younger docs, they treat revenue like income instead of fuel, right? Money is long-term, it'll be income, but short-term, it is gasoline that runs the machine that is your business. And if we starve our business of fuel, it's not going to grow to the extent that it certainly could. And so what I find is that most chiropractors don't really have a money issue early in business. They have a money allocation issue, right? Because when money first starts coming in, most doctors will immediately start paying themselves emotionally instead of investing strategically, right? So new docs usually oscillate between fear and excitement, right? It's like we have this pulling of I'm excited, but I'm also scared to death because I don't know what's going to happen, what's tomorrow's going to bring. And then we finally see money hit in the bank account and we're like, wow, this is what I spent years building to have this. And then what I find is they either will overspend personally, right? They just, it's like, wow, I've been a broke college kid for 8 years and now I have money. I'm going to go buy some cool stuff. So they overspend personally. Maybe they underinvest in growth is a common one, or they just panic hoard cash. It's like, oh, I have money, so I got to hoard it. I got to keep it. But all are very, very bad decisions early in business because revenue, guys, it's not validation. Revenue is responsibility. And the responsibility is what do you actually do with that revenue? And so there's kind of 3 phases I think about when I think about allocating money properly in business. I call them the 3 S's. It's survival, stability, and scale. So that first stage is all about survival. It's like I have to just stay alive long enough to gain traction. Right? It's like I have to be able to get enough income where I actually pay the bills, keep the doors open, and hopefully have some left over where I can actually have some living expenses. So in this early survival stage, we really want to allocate our money in marketing and your basic operations. Like that's the most important thing. And in the beginning, guys, cash flow matters way more than profit margin. Right? People like this sexy thing talking about profit. And yeah, profit's great long-term when you have a mature business, but short-term, I don't want you to have any profit. And that may sound crazy, like what, you don't want us to have profit? No, because if you're profiting, that means you're taking money out of the business. I want you to put every penny that you make back into that business because we need momentum initially, and momentum is fueled by money. The next stage is stability. That's where, okay, now we have kind of hit that build season of our career, right? We were paying the bills, we have some predictability going on. We probably have a team around us. And here we want to really shift that money allocation towards systems, right? Because initially in that launch phase, we are the system, right? And that's perfect. That's how it should be. But once you have team, you can't be the system anymore. So we have systems in place that will help our team understand what they need to do. And that's where we start to invest in team at that point. And so what I find is that most practices, they plateau because doctors never transition from just the hustle to actually building systems, right? What the worst way to do build is say, oh, okay, I'm too busy now to do everything myself, so I'll hire a bunch of assistants to support me, but we actually don't invest in them having systems for them. So assistants just show up and say, okay, I'm just going to do whatever Dr. Eric tells me to do today, right? But then it's all still on our shoulders. And then the last thing
Pause
is,
you there for 1 second, if
yeah,
that's okay.
no, please.
So, I mean, just practically, when I think about some of the launch docs that are going to be quickly in build, Eric's not saying that you can't pay yourself something because you need to live, right? It just means that part of the asset you're building is you, and some of the investing that needs to happen is like, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars have you poured into being coached, to getting the resources, to getting the seminars so that you can grow into the leader that you need to be? That's part of what we're talking about, is that the reinvestment throughout the whole thing. And just like you invested to get your space, to buy your tables, there's going to be a price to keep going to the next levels. And that's where I think a lot of people bump into themselves, because they're like, well, I made that original investment. It's like, yeah, and it keeps going, right?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously we have to survive but we want to make sure we don't overspend personally, right? We want to keep our overhead as lean as possible in that survival phase. I see some docs get out and they go and they buy all brand new tables and this beautiful, furniture for their office. It's like, no, it's like at first start off, I don't know about you, Lona, I bought used tables, like everything was used. But within a few years, I was able to buy all new stuff because my practice had grown and I had more profit. And so initially you want to start as lean as possible so that you can throw more and more money into marketing. It's really important. And so in the last stage I talked about was scale, and that's kind of outside this conversation, but scale is when you now invest in leverage, your leadership, like you talked about being a better leader, players, infrastructure. That's for a future conversation. So,
and that's the whole way through. Let's be honest, right? Like, early on, you're getting to any seminars that are going to develop you. And that's part of that investment, that tuition to keep building, right? Because you might hit 100 visits a week and you stay there until you get the right coaching or the right philosophy or the, ability to move smoothly that comes from getting outside of your comfort zone and going to get the tuition of the schooling that didn't happen during school, right?
100%. Yeah. And I'm going to definitely dig into that soon, because that's a huge investment we have to make. And, we see it in remarkable practice. So let's kind of break this stuff down. So where should we intelligently be allocating our money? First is going to be marketing, right? I touched on this first. The fastest way to suffocate a practice is to stop feeding it. Marketing is so crucial, especially when you're new, guys, because nobody knows you exist. Nobody knows you exist. And I find that most chiropractors, they underinvest in marketing, right? They spend inconsistently, they spend emotionally, but marketing should really be treated like oxygen for your business, right? If you don't spend money on marketing, you are suffocating the ability for business to grow, especially early on, because nobody knows you exist.
Right.
And one thing I kind of cringe when I hear people say this is, it's like, I'm a referral-based practice. And I'm like, great. So you're mediocre. Like, do you enjoy staying small? Like, that's great. You get referrals, but guess what? Everybody who's not in your office, they don't know you exist. So you want to spend to reach your community. You want to spend on the external, the digital. And initially, guys, when you're opening your practice, you don't have internal. You don't have a patient base to draw from. So everything's external and digital. You have to get out in your community and get known. And so, we talk about in TRP, we like set the standard of spend 8 to 12% of your goal revenue on marketing. But when you're first starting out, it should be 20, 30, 40% on marketing. Because first of all, your revenue goals are probably low because you don't have a lot yet, but nobody knows you exist. Conversion and retention are great, but if you don't have any new patients, you have nobody to convert or retain. And so we want to spend on marketing, but we want to measure that ROI like a hawk, right? We always say you don't get what you want, you get what you measure. So we want to invest in that marketing, take every spare penny you have and invest it in marketing until you get bigger. And now it's like, okay, now I can worry about adding team or all those other things.
Let me ask you this. I think I know the answer here, but I have some scar tissue from hiring marketers that did not produce what they said they were going to do. Does that mean that we stop looking for the ones that can do what they say they're going to do? The companies, the people, the others that can assist you with the marketing. Eric, I don't know. I hear that a lot. Like, oh, I've spent money before and it didn't do it. And it's like, then they're afraid to keep going.
Lona, did you marry the first guy you met?
No.
Did you give up on men after that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's the same thing with marketing, guys. So it's same thing, anything in business. Just because something fails, because I've heard docs say this about associates. Like I hired an associate, didn't work out, so I'm never hiring an associate again. I'm like, well, guess what? Sometimes that happens, right? So
Mhm.
that just wasn't the right marketing company for you, right?
Yes.
Or there wasn't the proper goals or communication, whatever that is. And
Mhm.
so marketing works really, really well when you do it properly.
Right.
And if you have that skill set as a doc, some docs are awesome at figuring out how to do social ads and monitoring it and beta testing. If you're good at that, awesome. If not, find a company that can do it for you. Because right now, and I tell all my clients this, social media is where all the eyeballs are. That's
Mhm.
where everybody is. Maybe 10 years from now, it's something different. But right now, everybody is on Instagram, Facebook. That's just where they are. And so if
Right.
you aren't present there, nobody's going to know you exist. So we want to
Yeah, I
invest
mean,
in
it's
what
like
works.
putting your head in the sand to say, "Oh, I don't wanna use that as a lever for my practice because I don't wanna have a low ticket offer. I don't wanna whatever." It's like, okay, but that is where people's attention is. So, yeah. Mhm.
100%. And
Yeah.
it's funny because we started to do some new advertising in the last few months. And the majority of people are coming in are like 60 and 70-year-olds, which
Yeah.
is just wild. I don't know why they're responding. And so that's showing these senior citizens are all over Facebook.
Mhm.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case, but they
Right.
are. And so
Right.
every age group now is all through social media. And
Mhm.
so if you want to be known, you got to be where their eyeballs are.
Yeah.
But when we do that, we want to track things like our CAC, cost to acquire customer, right? Our conversion, our retention. We don't just want to buy leads. We want to really measure how well you actually convert and retain them, right?
Mhm.
Because bad conversion and retention can make marketing look broken. This is an important point for newer docs. That's why we invest in coaching. Right? You
Mhm.
can get a ton of new ones, but if you don't convert and retain them,
Right.
it's just a revolving door.
Yep.
So
Same.
coaching gives you a massive return on investment when you have the right coach. And like you said, Lona, we teach from scar tissue. I don't know
Mhm.
about you, but I know I've paid well over $1 million in what I call the
Mhm.
dumb taxes. Just the mistakes that I've made, the tuition of the school of hard knocks. What I
Yes.
love about what we get to do is we help our clients avoid that. And not just the benefit of coaching is learning the things you should do, but sometimes more importantly, learning the things you should not do. Right. And that's what the value of having a mentor. I always say that the speed of your growth is determined by the quality of the rooms that you're in.
Yeah.
Surround
I
yourself
can
with
think of
people that are
several
successful.
conversations where Dr. Pete, who is my coach, has been like, "No, Lona." That's like a no. And then I'm like, "Okay, that's what I needed to hear today." Yeah.
Yeah. That's what coaching does. You avoid really expensive mistakes. You also have the accountability that a coach gives you, and you borrow their certainty. Right. I remember coaches early on in my career, I didn't have any confidence or certainty. So I kind of borrowed it from them because I'm like, well, they do it and they're successful. So why can't I be? Right. And once you borrow that, now it's like, okay, now you gain that certainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So
So
yeah.
that's one thing is invest in marketing, obviously. The second is really don't inflate your lifestyle too early. And I know I was a big guilty of this when I first started getting into practice because I don't know about you, Lona, but I grew up like middle class. I never worried about where my next meal was coming from or roof over my head, but we never had nice stuff. I had like, it's funny now. I see my kids' closets and like each of my kids has like 40 pairs of shoes. Growing up, I had 2 pairs of shoes. I had like the dressy shoes and then the school shoes. Like that's all I ever had, right?
Mhm.
And so once we started getting money, I was like, wow, I can go buy stuff, right?
Mhm.
And I definitely spent way too much on lifestyle that wasn't necessary and not investing enough in my business. There's this cool thing called lifestyle creep. If you ever heard of this, Lona, but it's like when your personal spending will increase in alignment with your income increase. It's
Yep.
like as I make more money, I spend more money, right? I see some people, just friends and even clients, it's like they make 100 or $500,000 a year, but they spend $500,000 a year. It's almost like
Right.
they live paycheck to paycheck, even
Oh,
though
yeah.
they make massive amounts of income, right? So we want to make sure that we are living a lifestyle below what our income is, so that we have that extra money to put back in the practice, savings, obviously everything else, right? And so the third thing is most
And I'm
doc.
going to just add that you could be the opposite of that, like where you are so frugal that you almost also undercut yourself because you're afraid to spend some of the money, right? And that
Mhm.
can, so you have to ask yourself, like, which side of the coin am I at,
Sure.
Mhm.
And if you are going to spend it, make sure you invest in your business, right?
Yes. As well
Because
as like there is some elements I do believe, like let's say you've lived super frugally for a long time and the practice is exploding, doing really well. You are reinvesting in it. Like that way you feel about yourself, like maybe it's time for you to live in a better apartment or
sure,
maybe it's time for you to finally upgrade your car and you do it logically, right? Like that can actually, I believe the way we feel about like I just have worked so hard, that is good, but you have to know where you're at. That's like, see yourself in this. Am I someone who just blows cash and I'm always rewarding myself? Or am I someone who is, yeah, like I never do it because I'm always afraid of what's going to happen next?
yeah, no, totally. Yeah, there's certainly a balance. We
Mhm.
want to certainly reward ourselves for the hard work that we do, but also obviously do it very intelligently. Yeah,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
The next point is really investing in team earlier than most docs think, right? And investing in good people, because the cheapest employee is usually the most expensive employee long term.
Amen.
Right. So it's like, oh, if I can't get somewhere for $16 an hour, I'm not hiring. It's like, okay, then you're not going to get anybody good. Right. And you're costing yourself time and energy. And every hour that a doctor spends doing $15 an hour tasks is an hour that they're not doing $300 an hour tasks.
Right.
Right. So at some point you need to get to the point where it's like, yeah, we want you guys to put your head down and work really hard at first. I know when I first got into practice, I didn't have kids, so I had no distractions. Like I worked 80 hours a week, and that was what my practice needed and what I wanted to do. But eventually I couldn't do it all anymore. Right. And so I started investing in other people where I could delegate those $15, $20 an hour tasks that were taking up my time. So we definitely want to do it intelligently, but we want to invest in good people. You don't want to just get somebody that can get for cheap who's not going to add a lot of value to your business. Right. Because freedom is really purchased through systems and people. It's not purchased through income. Right. You can have really high income, but have zero freedom. The business, you are tied to the business. Right. And so that's where we always talk about you can have a remarkable practice, part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. That's what we advocate in TRP. Yeah.
It's good.
Yep. So a couple of the biggest mistakes I see, just to kind of wrap here, is we wait too long to market. Many docs wait too long to market. They treat marketing like an expense instead of an investment. So realize, guys, when you're tracking your return on investment, this is exactly what TRP can help you guys do, is what are you getting for every dollar you put into marketing? Saying marketing is expensive doesn't make sense. Like last month, we spent $12,000 in my office on digital ads. And so people are like, oh my gosh, you spent $12,000. But for that, we got 30 new patients and we converted 20 of them. And our LTV is around $3,500. So we got $70,000 for that $12,000. That's like a 6-to-1 return, 7-to-1. It's like, how many times would you put $1 in if you get $7 back? Every single time. And so as long as you're getting the good ROI, that's the most important thing. Put every dollar you can back into marketing, because it's going to give you the best return on investment outside of equipping your team. And the second mistake, hiring too late, like we said, right? A lot of times docs will wait until they're drowning before they get help. That's not good for you. That's not good for the practice. That's not good for the patients. Again, the emotional spending, we want to avoid that. Sometimes we reward ourselves too early. We need to reward ourselves, but we don't want to do it too early. Yep. One of the biggest mistakes is not knowing their numbers. This is something that TRP is very passionate about, helping people make database decisions. Because the guys, if you don't know your numbers, you do not know your business. End of story. We got to track.
Back to the original point, like of hiring marketing, if you don't know what your vision is and what those numbers represent, there is a case where, let's say your vision is whatever volume, you don't want multi-docs in your office, it's just you. Yeah, maybe you can rely on internal referrals if that was your vision, right? And you're hitting those numbers, but you'd have to know. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to know. But I still argue even then, it's like, if you're only relying on internal referrals, you're not reaching more people in the community.
I know. It just depends on, again, the vision that you have for the growth of your business.
Yeah. If you want to have a lifestyle practice where it stays something that you can handle yourself and you don't want to expand, that's awesome. But that's not really a business, that's a job. And I think most of the people in TRP land don't want to just settle for that.
Right.
Yeah. And so the last mistake I see docs make is just they try to maximize profit too early. Right. It's funny because, in this TikTok culture, there's so much cool stuff on Instagram and TikTok talking about profitability and all this kind of stuff. And docs are talking about their profit, but it's like, don't worry about profit too early, because if you're taking profit, you're restricting the growth of your business. People are like, oh, I invest in the stock market. That's great. You're going to get 9 to 10% annual return. You know how much you get when you reinvest in your business? 10 times that return is what you'll get by investing in your business, if not more. And so there's time for investing in our retirement long-term, and, invest in real estate if that's what you like, or the stock market, certainly. But the first few years of your business is not the time to do that, right? Because you're robbing your opportunity to growth. And so optimization is about driving more profit. Early on, we don't care about that. We care about growth, right? Once you have a team that is built and is executing effective systems, now you can start to focus on profit. See, I want new docs to hear this. Every dollar spent in a new chiropractic practice should answer one question. Does this increase future capacity? Does it increase future capacity? If the answer is yes, invest. If no, reconsider spending that money. That's what we're focusing on those first couple of years of practice.
That's great. And we could do the same, thinking about, where's your energy focused? Does it lead to the practice growing? I think I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago. We were talking to a new doc that had just opened her office. And she said, I want to be retired in it was like under 10 years. Right. And it was one of those things where I was like, well, I don't want to hate on her dream. And yet at the same time, I'm like, is this really where you should be focused on in this immediate moment where your practice is barely launched? Probably not. And it goes back to that whole like Instagram, TikTok culture sometimes too, of just like, can we make it sexy again to realize you're going to bust your ass to build this thing? And in doing so and being super focused, it's going to provide you with a lot of options. But if we only focus on like, I don't want to work, but somehow I think I'm going to get there, that to me was just like such a major disconnect. And we see that in the money conversations. We see that in the wanting something, but not have had built anything close to that yet. And that's where a coach sometimes has to have like a very direct come to Jesus moment of,
Yeah.
what is this really going to take to build this practice?
Yeah. And that's part of our job too, is expanding the mindset of our clients. Like if you'd have told me 20 years ago that I could be a chiropractor, yet be out of patient care and just run a great business and hire amazing docs and have them serve and just be the CEO, I would never even thought that was possible. Never in a million years would I have thought that was even a thing. But I have coaches that expand my understanding and what possibilities like, and it completely changed my vision of what success looked like.
Right.
Right. So certainly we want to honor our clients' vision, but we also want to stretch it. So they
Yeah.
they
And
don't
bring it
understand what
back
they're
to like
capable.
right now, here's what needs to be done to start that process. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And same thing with the money, right? Like recognizing that some of the things that, when Eric's saying investing in the practice instead of necessarily rewarding lifestyle changes right now, knowing that by doing that, you actually are giving yourself a lot more future abundance. And it's that whole like, can I just put off the reward for a little bit longer? Can I invest more of my energy? Can I invest more of my money? Can I invest more of my time? Knowing that it's going to pay dividends for decades
Hmm.
if I get this thing to the next level or the next several levels and do it methodically.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. Delay gratification.
Yes. It's not as sexy as we like to think it is, but yeah.
But when you do this right, you're not delaying very long. Like
Mm.
just 1 to 2 years, if you do everything right, if you have TRPs or guides, like we will get you guys, help you guys get very busy very quickly. So it's
Mhm.
like, okay, now I can actually enjoy the fruits of my labor.
Right.
Right. But enjoying the fruits too early suffocates a business, and it causes stress to the business and to you.
Yeah. Last thought, as I have some younger docs in launch right now, one of the other things I saw a couple times is, again, I'm not trying to replace their vision, but hesitant to get a space that they actually could be in long term, like wanting to go, and they have the resources to do it. So it's not like somebody who has to be totally on a shoestring to launch. And so that's something too that a coach can really help with. Because in the case I'm thinking of, I'm like, they had every opportunity to go into a bigger space, and we ended up going with a slightly bigger space because I'm like, you're not going to want to move in a year or 2 years when you're busting out of one or two rooms, so again, you could be on either side of that coin, right? Where you're really limiting yourself.
Yeah, and it depends on what kind of practice you have. If it is an adjustment only, you can do that, a lot of that in the small space. If you really want to get into decompression and shockwave and laser, those things are great too, but you're going to need more space for that. So it's really
Yeah.
understanding the kind of practice you want,
Yeah.
but also making sure you don't get locked into too long-term leases initially. Right.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's tough because a bigger space sounds good, but it's also a bigger money commitment. Right.
Right.
And
Well, I'm
so
talking the difference between a one room and like 1,500 square feet. So yeah.
oh, okay. Yeah. I think I would never start with less than 1,500 square feet, because if you do what you should do, and if you're guided by TRP, you're going to hit that capacity definitely within a few years.
Yep.
100%.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you,
Cool.
Eric.
That was a great conversation.
Yeah. We'll see you on the next one.
Sounds good.
Hey everyone, please listen in for this next bonus interview of one of our remarkable success partners. They all help us help more people find the benefits of chiropractic. So listen on.
We're here with Dan from Twoconnect, one of our fantastic success partners in Australia. Dan, tell us a little bit about the specific problems that Twoconnect solves for chiropractic clinics that are engaging with Twoconnect and using them for their services. What problems do you guys solve as a business?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, and great to be here. Basically, the problems that we're solving is helping with certain administrative aspects of practices. So that very often can break down into the problems of specifically to lead conversion and patient life cycle and reactivation. So what we hear a lot as we're talking to chiros is a kind of low level anxiety about, are we following up on leads quickly enough, and B, enough times? It might take multiple calls. Do our front of house staff really have the bandwidth to be doing that? So there's a feeling that no, we're probably not. We're leaving revenue on the table there. The other piece as well is about reactivation. So, we've got this big database of people that have come in. Maybe there's people 6, 12, 18 months we haven't heard from. Do we have any real meaningful engagement with them? Probably not so much. So again, there's a problem there with not maximizing that database and not going back and getting conversions, running campaigns. And then probably a third would just be other administrative aspects. So there might be things that can sit behind the scenes that can be done from an offshore perspective, because to be clear, what we're talking about is a dedicated team member working in the Philippines for the practice. And this might be things like X-ray roll-ups, or it might be doing certain aspects of reporting, punching numbers into spreadsheets, right through to, as I say, the more sort of patient-facing roles. So yeah.
I guess kind of in a nutshell, what you're talking about is finding a labor force outside of the local area. And, I've got a busy practice. I've got numerous CAs, and finding an A player is difficult. We've had hiring processes where we get 150 to 200 applications, and maybe 3 of them are worth actually pulling into the clinic and having a face-to-face interview. So that can be super frustrating. So you're talking about finding a specialized labor force outside of your local area, specifically the Philippines.
Yeah.
And so from the sounds of it, you've helped people with their marketing and lead follow-up and lead generation, or taking them from, a prospect into a patient, converting them to a patient.
Yeah.
You've also, interesting, you mentioned like ruling up X-rays and those kind of little tasks. You find specialized people that can do that sort of stuff, train them up for what we want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. The way that the model works is that we have a chat with the chiro and go, like, what's the role profile? Like, what are you after? What's the need? Where's the pain? And then we go, okay, well, here's a position description. Does that meet that? Any tweaks to this, any arrangements? And then it's like, yes, let's go forward. And if it's go forward, give us a couple of weeks. We'll come back with 3 to 4 candidates who meet that brief, who have some kind of background. So it might be, say, a medical background, or even if sometimes it can be a more salesy background, for example. And we go, right, here's these 3 to 4 candidates. Which one do you like best? And then maybe we can do some role plays or some scenario-based testing to really de-risk it and make sure we've got the right person. And then, we deploy them. So it's a pretty simple model. It basically, a lot of it rests on us. It's de-risked because you're not paying anything until that person's actually starting work. And it's also, you're not having to bring on another employer and all of the employment liability with that, because they're employed to our legal entity in the Philippines. We manage all of the HR, the payroll, the holiday management, all of that. And they align to Australian time zones, they align to your national holidays. So all of that heavy lifting is done in the background. You just get that full-time team member. You get to select the one that you want. And we're off and running.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a major problem solver for a lot of particularly busy practices. But even, I guess, you've probably had scenarios where people who are, solo practitioner or not too many staff have engaged with your services to really help them expand and grow. So for example, for our build docs who are just starting out and just starting to get the clinic rolling, and they need somebody specialized, but they've got a jack of all trades at the front, which is often what happens when you hire your first CA. I guess you guys can add an extra dimension into specializing particular roles reasonably quickly from what.
That is the case. That is the case. Or I will say, I want to be transparent about this. I do understand that often there's a certain point or a certain scale where this starts making more sense. And often that is, maybe there is 2 to 3 plus fully loaded chiropractors where you start to go, right, we've got CAs, but those CAs are busy, and we got admin building up. Again, these things, are we calling people enough? That's when this model can probably really start to come into play, and the ROI starts to come into effect. I just wanted to be clear about that, because solo practitioners, often just that single CA might be covering things, and we do provide full-time roles. So that's where that sort of ROI stack up starts to come into play.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of that ROI, what kind of ROI can a CEO expect from investing in engaging with Twoconnect, bringing in somebody offshore, a virtual chiropractic assistant.
Yeah.
Have you got a case study or an example?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we've got multiple case studies, and I guess the underlying maths is that getting one of our virtual CAs or patient support representatives or lead conversion specialists, it's going to cost between 55 and 65% less than hiring someone onshore for but for that uh, requisite level of skill set. So if you start to think about that and where the ROI, say for like the back doctor or Chiro H3 or some of these businesses that we've worked with, Wellbeing Chiropractic as well, is it's when you're going, right, we've got this full-time resource who's costing half what a normal person would cost. There's no, superannuation or anything like that to worry about. And the call volumes that are being made because they're dedicated to this is usually 6-7-fold. So therefore, we've seen conversion rates, double and triple based on just being able to deploy that cost-effective resource appropriately to that, that conversion funnel, basically. And again, similarly, sometimes there's a split or a hybrid role where they're doing some of that lead conversion stuff, but also they're taking admin away from the CA. So that's where the ROI kicks in. And there's also, I think, critically a real patient and actual customer satisfaction piece as well. So what I mean is the front of house COs, the people physically there, are able to, the phone is not ringing as much basically, and they're not having to make as many phone calls, and maybe there's inboxes being taken care of at a certain level as well. Therefore, that's going to translate into a more present patient experience. What that also means is that output is happening from the offshore perspective.
So in terms of, I guess, when we're talking about the direct ROI and we talk about the, cost to acquire a customer,
Yeah.
it's, I guess, a bit of a balancing act, right? Because if we're going to invest in offshore help and we're going to invest in, digital marketing, which is, reasonably expensive for a chiropractic profession, unless you're doing it really right and you've got your ads optimized, all that kind of stuff, but it's still an expense. One thing that I don't like with my digital leads that I've paid to acquire is I don't like them sitting in our CRM waiting for someone to touch them. And we know that there's so much data on this that the faster you call that prospect once they're in your CRM, the higher the likelihood of them actually coming into your practice. And I think it was something like the research was 87% more likely if you call them within the first 5 minutes. Now, I run a busy practice. I know my CAs work hard. Often they just don't have the time resource to do that. So I guess what you're talking about is a protection of the ROI that you're already putting into marketing to, funnel in those leads. And also you mentioned the reactivation campaigns. You're right. We've got a whole bunch of a large database of people that have only stopped coming in because they just kind of lost their way. It's not because they didn't love chiropractic.
Yeah.
Because, they weren't having a great experience. They just kind of got a little bit lost and they slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, or often there's something really small, and we see our clients being smart and doing reactivation campaigns that aren't, hey, you haven't been in for a while, do you want to come back in? It's more you can almost position it as like a feedback gathering kind of survey kind of piece. So you're calling saying, not sure if you recall, but 8-10 months ago you came in, and we're just doing doing a piece of work to understand what that experience was like. Was there anything, what was that experience for you? And sometimes doing that, somebody can bring out that thing, whatever that was that barrier that made them come back. And then, of course, what you can do is do work to go, oh, okay, well, if that's the case, and you can overcome that objection and get them back in as well. So it can be a multifaceted. So you're getting feedback from the market about what your patients are feeling, especially the ones who aren't coming back. You can start building that up and go, listen, what I'm hearing is, you can build lists of these are the reasons that people aren't coming back in. Some of them might be known, and you might go, sure, maybe it's money related, or maybe but maybe there's an experience that they're having that you're not aware about. So again, it's that patient care. So yes, quicker to call. Also, the reactivations, getting information from that database and getting conversions from that. But also, you can just perhaps layer in a patient life cycle touch that you never had before because we've got resource to do it. Wouldn't it be good if, after X point or Y point, they got a call and were asked this specific question, or we're given this specific piece of information, for example. So you can really start to get smart and much more interactive with your client base.
And I think probably the beautiful thing about that, especially in an age of, bots and automated calls and all that kind of stuff, is we're actually talking about speaking to an actual person,
Yeah.
human touch, which is,
Yes.
you know,
And listen, on that point, Andrew, I would just want to bring something up, which I think is fair. Sometimes people say, okay, offshore resource, I get it, it's cheaper, sure. But, what is that accent like? What's the English like? And I'd say two things to that. One, this wouldn't be up and running successfully in this space if we weren't talking about people who were great, bubbly, empathetic communicators. Absolutely the expectation is that they have a very high level. The second piece is that you don't have to take our word for it. The way that the model works is you see the candidates, you make the choice. And if you simply said, well, these candidates aren't up to scratch from any perspective, but if it was communication perspective, then it's on us to find you some better candidates. I just wanted to take that off the table because I know that sometimes people go offshore. I've got concerns about how that's going to come across with our brand. That is something that we take care of, and you are always in control of that.
And you know what? I think it's a bigger problem in people's mind than it actually is in reality. I actually have somebody from the Philippines who's local who works on my front desk. And nobody bats an eyelid when she rings them and makes a genuine call from the front desk. So they go, "Oh yeah, she works there."
Yeah.
The more multicultural your workforce is, the less people are stressed about it. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I believe for sure.
I think we've actually kind of touched on this question, but the next thing I wanted to ask you was when we consider what's important next in kind of looking at the future trajectory of the chiropractic profession, the way the world is heading, how are you helping chiropractors to prepare to succeed in the future?
Yeah, look, I think what it is we sit in that critical piece, which is where the remarkable practice sits, which is with chiropractors who are going, how am I looking to build that business machine? Really, that funnel, all of the metrics that sit behind it, CAC to LTV, all of these, critical metrics. As you start moving in that direction, naturally you're measuring those things so that you can improve those phases. You can improve each stage, whether it be conversion, whether it be life cycle, whether it be whatever the case may be. And what offshoring allows is to say, hang on a second, traditionally this phase of what we do, this part of our offering just incurs this amount of cost and this amount of effort in terms of recruiting new people, recruiting CAs to come in. Actually, it turns out that the CAs that we hire, a lot of them, they're good with our people, but they don't really like, getting on the phones. That's a bit of a sort of a have to do and that kind of thing. So it completely changes that equation. And we can come and say, right, let's look at all that overall business. Let's look at that pain and let's look at that cost. And let's fundamentally change that. We can cut that in half or even better. And we can move to a more metrics-based approach where we are using these metrics and getting more metrics input from these people as well, because they have the time to be actually putting in things into spreadsheets or into CRMs and things like that, measuring that, building reports off the back of that. So I'd say the thing, what we're doing is we're helping chiropractors scale with just dramatically reducing that operating cost from a people perspective. But that kind of bandwidth and those types of roles we're also seeing is helping feed into improved metrics as well. Yeah, those are probably the key points that I'd make. Perhaps a final thing as well is that if there is a point where practices maybe are thinking of growing and there's maybe multiple practices or multiple locations as well, this solution can work really well for that. So we've got one person who can now be working across two locations, 3 locations, or however many locations that you need. So it's basically a way of helping accelerate growth by driving efficiency, reducing costs and improving the way that you're working with metrics.
You know, you mentioned that CAC to LTV ratio, right? And we're also talking about protecting that investment that you put into marketing. And if you can optimize your marketing funnel for the same amount of ad spend, then your CAC goes down.
Yeah.
Even and if we're doing it efficiently, even if we add that expense of, offshore, the CAC still goes down because it's significantly more optimized and perhaps converting prospects from, I don't know, throw some numbers out, 20, if we can get it to 30 or 40%, the immediate ROI.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm sure you've heard this, but we do again hear that anxiety of like, well, I would like to put some more money in the top of the funnel and spend more money on marketing, but I'm not really sure we're going to catch it. Like we're just going to be money in, but that's more calls, and we're already struggling to make those returns. So it does free up and make that growth feel a little bit more possible, a little bit more sustainable. But it's not just the CAC, it's the LTV as well, because if you're able to communicate more regularly at more critical touch points with a patient, and again, get back into those traditional someone who, right, the LTV has come to an end, not if we're doing reactivations in smart ways as well. So it's both ends of that
both ends of the scale. That's the dream.
Yeah.
So I guess what we're really talking about is Twoconnect can come along and they can plug that leaky bucket, plug the hole in that leaky bucket, whether that leaky bucket represents, the marketing funnel and just leads, prospects just dropping out of that funnel because they're not getting called fast enough, or the genuine patient base who people are leaking out of that bucket just because they get lost and there's no reactivation campaign.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
That sounds like a wonderful solution. Now, I've actually got one other question that I'm just going to throw in there. There's a lot of different offshoring kind of agencies. Sometimes people go searching for themselves. You touched on this briefly, but what sets Twoconnect apart from those other agencies and the option of looking for offshore labor?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think the DNA of Twoconnect is interesting because it's a family-run business, and the story actually is that the Kukla family who set up the business lived in the Philippines for a long period of time, and the founder and MD actually basically grew up there. So there's a real understanding and connection with the country, with the people, with the culture, and also a deep understanding of the workforce and what it takes to do business over there. So there's kind of a dual mission for Twoconnect, which is, yes, to serve our clients with excellence, but it's also to provide great working opportunities for hardworking Filipinos and their families as well. So, for example, we have private health insurances built into the offering. So we've got a really good reputation over there of looking after our people incredibly well. The other piece is that part of our basis and our partnerships over in the Philippines was that it started from a medical background. So we've always understood how to operate in that space, the importance of looking after patients and having how to source those people and look after them really well. So those are probably the key points. And quite frankly, now I think that Twoconnect has more chiropractic clients than frankly anyone else. So we've carved out a niche, and we've got to work with the remarkable practice and really spend some time understanding how chiropractors work and what the drivers and needs are.
Yeah, and look, we're a unique profession and our needs and focuses are completely different, and having somebody who understands, you're already talking about cost to acquire a customer versus lifetime value ratios, all that kind of stuff. So it's good to see that we have these success partners that can genuinely fix a problem for our remarkable client practice or our remarkable practice clients, but also that they add value to their community. I remember you talking about, like, you guys even go above and beyond to make sure they get a birthday cake or something for their birthday, and that helps improve
company policy. Yeah,
employee retention is what we want, right? If we get an A player, we want to hold on to that A player. Sounds like you guys are nailing it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that after our little conversation, a lot of people listening are like, you know what, this is the solution that I need to help scale my practice further. What's the best way for a listener to learn more or take the next step to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So firstly, I'd say there might be some listening who say, wow, this is definitely something I need. And there might be another demographic who are just saying, there might be something there. And even if it's not now, I'd kind of like to figure out a little bit how it might work, even if it's in 6 to 12 months that this might come into focus more meaningfully. So more than happy to, I just want to make that clear. I'd be more than happy to speak to absolutely anyone, wherever you're at on that stage, even if it's a 10, 15 minute little fact finding mission, and we can throw some pricing around, answer a couple of questions and check in 6, 12 months. So completely fine with that. So basically, my name's Dan Anticich. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you go onto the Twoconnect.com.au website, you can submit via a form there, and I'll get in touch with you from there. Or, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. The Twoconnect website, go there, get in touch, and I'd love to chat, and we can arrange a time to go through things.
And I'm sure if anyone listening just went, oh, okay, I don't know which one I'm going to do, fail safe is just send a message to somebody at the Remarkable Practice, and we'll put you in touch with Dan.
Absolutely right. Appreciate that.
Thanks for your time today, Dan. And as always, it's a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.